Yo, hello, hello, hello.
Hello?
Yeah, can you hear me?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah,
What's up?
okay. Well, what's it called? Do you want me to just give the sorts of motivations that I have for believing say soul theory about personal identity, and then you can just tell me the disagreements you have?
Um, hmm. Yeah, probably. Yeah, I think the main contention, I'm probably predict the main contention is going to be about souls. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I guess the argument just goes if it were true that there's no persistent self, then most statements we make about our own mental states are false. And then if most statements we make about our own mental states are false, then that's good reason for us to be skeptics about most, if not all, moral and epistemic claims. And then the conclusion is just that if there's no persistent self, that's good reason for us to be skeptic about most moral and epistemic claims, which would commit us to a weird form of Cartesian skepticism. So that's just a motivating reason to
Yeah.
believe there's a persistent self.
I'm pretty sure I'd find that to be unsound. I've rejected a few of those. I think the glaring issue to me is that we could just say that, as most people who do deny personal identity do, that it's a social fiction. Right? It's like some fictional statement. In the same way that people who don't hold to true mereological objects might say that there's some fiction about there being a chair that is here.
Yeah.
But it's still a true statement. And it's not going to reduce
I don't know
many of
if you'd say that
the true claims there. Because we could also say, we could say something it might be an arbitrary thing that we make out for the personal identity, but whatever arbitrary set of things that we're describing about the world, that these things are true, right? The parts that make up the necessary components for the mental thing, I believe this is the same thing, but that's there and that's true.
Yeah,
and that's the truth bearer for the claim.
Yeah, well, there's a few issues with that. So, for one, if we were to take it as a social fiction, I take it that would still be false. So, typically, also called, say, for example, you're an error theorist, and people who are error theorists are fictionalists about most, are typically fictionalists about moral claims. So, they believe they aren't actually true, but we behave as though they are true. But they can still believe those sorts of claims while also holding to error theory, which states that what's it called, that all moral statements are just systematically false because of the fact that they just take those statements to be true in the fictional sense, or they just take those statements to be false. So even though we pretend they're true, but the argument is supposed to pick out that if they are false, right, then the conclusions would follow. And for the second bit, I've kind of forgot what you said about the latter parts specifically.
Yeah, so I guess I could just take the part that you're talking about, and maybe we can jump back to some other critiques I might have later on.
Yeah.
But I think the main problem is that error theorists are trying to deny the type of thing that we're talking about, the stance-independent reason. The error theorist wants to say is that both the typical assumption of the proposition and its negation, that neither of these things are describing anything in particular. But the person who denies personal identity isn't saying something like this. The person who denies personal identity still identifies that there are mental states, that there are living creatures and whatnot.
Yeah.
It's just that the thing that makes up the persons, right, that's not a reducible thing, and it's also it doesn't end up bearing out ontologically.
Well, typically...
And so, the issue that I'm seeing is this. Okay, if you want to interrupt me, you think you've got something that you want to interact with. But the main issue I'm running into is essentially the different ways that would be logically formatted.
Yeah, well, the sort of issue I have with that specifically is just, well, one, I think in the case of the case in which you say you're a fictionalist about personal identity and the error theory case, I don't take those two to be relevantly different. So take the case in which you're I'm a fictionalist about personal identity, even though you agree that, say, some of the parts to which people may think constitute a person, right, exist, you just disagree that the actual thing or person which they are trying to pick out there actually exists. Yeah, so in the same
the things together.
Yeah, in the same way how what's it called? It's somebody who's an error theorist won't particularly deny, say, things such as stance independent facts exist. They aren't denying those type of things, but they're denying a specific instantiation or denying a
Yeah,
specific label.
they're
Right?
denying the types that you're talking
Yeah,
about,
yeah. So in the
the moral
case of
types
like
of stance-independent
yeah, in the
facts,
case
right?
of like
The
personal identity,
reasons, the
they're just
stance-independent
denying
reasons. I didn't say like stance-independent facts.
yeah. But in the case of
So
like
I think the issue there, I'm not sure if you're picking up on what I'm saying. I'm not sure if my microphone's not working. The issue there, I didn't say stance-independent facts, I said stance-independent reasons.
Yeah,
so if they're
yeah.
denying the existence of those types of things. Well,
Yeah.
the person who denies sense of identity, they're not denying the existence of the physical things which constitute what we make out whenever we say a person.
Yeah.
And, what the person who's like denying personal identity is saying is that there's like inclusion, exclusion conditions, that these things can be contradictory, and thus we're talking about something fictional. The person who's denying moral talk as it's espoused isn't trying to have the contention similar.
Yeah, no, but wait, okay, so how do you think you constitute, say, denials about personal identity? You think it's just like they agree some of these traits do exist, but they just disagree on whether or not like these traits like actually persist through time? Because if so, they would still be denying the type which is trying to be inferred in that case.
But yeah, like to some extent, some traits do fail to persist over time.
Yeah.
Essentially, what's being communicated by the person who denies personal identity is that the things that make up the traits are inclusive and exclusive in their nature, rather than being things that are necessary or sufficient.
When you say inclusive or exclusive, what do you mean?
Yeah, inclusive and exclusive, the way that like laws could be inclusive or exclusive on conditions. So an example might be that like those who have ownership of land can vote in elections, right? And the inclusion condition there is owning land.
Yep.
An exclusion condition might be something like women cannot vote. But the issue here is like if we take the law to be like a real thing that's like substantiated out, there'd be a contradiction if like a woman
I don't think
because they'd be able to vote and not vote. But
I mean, well,
in the same way, they're denying the social aspect of what we're talking about, right? Because we do have these contradictory scenarios, these places where our intuitions seem to either go awry or not track on to anything in particular.
Yeah.
And so the person who's denying personal identity is just saying something like, those things that are inclusive and exclusive they're not the types of things that we're talking about.
Yeah, well, I mean, again, the sort of disagreement there is in the case in which somebody who's like denying personal identity, I think specifically what they're denying are the sort of persistence conditions which actually continue to exist over time. So take, for example, Hume's view just take, for example, Hume's view where he just states like, okay, well, since there are just all of these specific traits about humans, right, which are consistently changing like over time, right, like over like large periods of time, like very, very quickly. Therefore, there is no self which continues to exist, right? Those are the sorts of reasons that they have. So I'm not sure people who deny personal identity are saying something strict like people don't exist. I think what they're saying is specifically these sorts of persistence conditions don't exist, right? So there still is some inclusion and exclusion, being that there's this type that we could label people, right? And then we're trying to determine if this type people continue to exist. So they are still making some inclusive and exclusive claim. But
I think you're making a lot of errors here. So no, they're not really interested in just denying the types of things that make up personal identity fail to exist. Because like the types of things which seem relevant to personal identity as we espouse it, maybe something like somebody's mental states or something like, they don't deny that mental states exist. Nobody denies, personal identity denies that. They might bring up certain cases which are like exemplary of places where our seeming conditions no longer track with our intuitions, right? And they might be bringing up something like that. So like one thing might be like if somebody says physical continuity is what makes up a being's existence, their personal identity over time. We have things like the teletransporter cases. They brought up by people like Parfit.
Yeah.
And so those are going to be places where but people like Parfit are not interested in denying like mental facts or something like that.
Yeah, but even in Parfit's case, Parfit isn't denying something, he isn't saying something strict like people do not exist. Either the sort of claim he's making is either A, that we are mistaken about what people are specifically, or the fact that even on this view of people, we wouldn't be able to properly account for like persistence, right? So like under the sort of construal of like say anti-realism about personal identity,
that's a reductionist view on the a limitivists have a different view.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm
well,
not sure if you.
when you
So
say you
when you're
deny
attacking the reductionist view, when you're attacking the reductionist view, I'm trying to what is your contention with somebody like Parfit's view?
with
Somebody like
Parfit's
the
view,
reductionist brings up saying, hey, all of these other things which seem to be the ways that we declare out the truth conditions, the truth bearers, or make somebody's personal identity, all these things, they don't actually track.
The sort of issue there is that if he
we
says,
must be either mistaken or it's the case that there's something else that doesn't okay. So what's your contention with a view like that?
Parfit's view, I just don't think Parfit's view actually specifically gives any sort of good motivating reason as to why, say, a view like soul theory wouldn't be able to properly account for the self.
Well, say for soul theory's ability to properly account for that, I'm curious, we'll obviously get into that with some time, but you would agree then, in all the other example cases that Parfit brings up, our intuitions here seem to lead us astray.
Well, I think under Parfit's view, the sort of motivation well, I mean, I just don't I don't think that's what his view is trying to say. I think what his view is trying to say specifically, even if
his view is, so,
I mean,
if you say no, or
no, I just don't think that's a proper construal of his view. I think what his view is trying to say specifically with cases like the teletransporter cases, that,
let me know.
With that, okay, well, specifically we have these sort of we're claiming that we have these sort of intuitions, but upon reflecting on it and giving other cases, right, and expanding the sort of knowledge we have of certain hypotheticals, right, our intuitions do not lead us that specific way. So it isn't saying that our intuitions about the matter categorically are mistaken. No.
So to be very clear, no, it brings up given individual cases, and these cases are exemplary of places where our intuitions do not track it. We'll either have things that, the things that we want to base out what makes somebody a person, such as the physical objects being in a way such that it describes the person who is there. But then that's why teleport cases are brought up, where you seemingly have two of the same people, right? The things that we seem to intuitively respond with when accounting for personal identity, those don't seem to be actually basing out.
Well,
and so if what you want to say is actually it's somebody's soul, I'm curious, what's somebody's soul? Right?
Yeah.
Because what we agree with on the other end is that all of the other theories for personality that Parfit's bringing up, these things are they're not tracking on the intuitions. You just think you have a theory that does track out properly.
Yeah.
But my main issue with soul theory is just that it seems like it reduces down to just being whatever the personal identity thing is. So, well,
I mean, there's if you
I'm a little curious as to how you account for something
in Parfit's view specifically, all I think Parfit is trying to do is, there's some given theory which he's trying to respond to, being in this case animalism, and the person who's purporting animalism is trying to claim our intuitions are in favor of specifically the animalist thesis, and he's trying to say, given reflection, right, our intuitions are not in favor of these theses. So he isn't making some claim our intuitions are just leading us astray, right? He's saying that, actually the sort of claim that our intuitions align in this specific sort of manner or support this sort of view, right, that sort of claim is false, right? Making that sort of claim about our intuitions would be false, right? And the second thing is just, I think soul theory just best accounts for these views, or best accounts for persistence, the strong intuitions we have for persistence, right? I don't think there's any sort of overwhelming motivating reason as to why we should dismiss specifically our own overwhelmingly strong intuitions about the matter, that we do continue to exist over time, which is demonstrated through our linguistic practices. But
so the responses given by Parfit in his book do address multiple different theories. I'm not sure why you think it only responds to animalism, and I'm not sure how you think the response.
That's just the main case I can remember.
So no, you keep interrupting, please. I didn't interrupt you. Right? You had an entire spiel. Just give me 1 second. Right. So it doesn't really respond to anything that I said there. Do you remember the question that was brought up towards you?
The question specifically, was it not just how does soul theory best account for these intuitions?
No.
What is a soul? Sorry.
Yeah. The question that you were asked was, I'm glad you remember it now, what is the material thing that is a soul? Well, whenever you say that is the thing that makes up somebody's personal identity, what is that thing? Because the big issue that's still underlying the argument is that we don't really know what that even is.
Yeah, there's a few issues. So one, I just don't grant that the soul is a physical object. I'm not sure why I'd have to commit myself to the view that soul is a physical object. That's
So
why I
it's
also think
some non-physical object. So
yes,
yeah,
yes, yes. But
help
also
me
that way.
understand what is a soul.
Well, yeah, I'm about to elaborate, but so I already don't think that all like physicalist theories of personal identity fail, but I just take a soul to be some first-person bearer of experiences, right, which has maybe certain sort of
I'm not sure.
dispositions, right, which we display through our own mental state. So it's just a first-person bearer of
The
experiences.
soul is a first-person bearer of
Yes,
experiences.
a first-person
So a
non-physical
soul
substance which
is,
bears experiences.
unless you mean a first-person bearer, right? Unless you mean something like perspective, a qualia that exists, you mean
Just a bearer of
some
experience.
continuous person, right? And so now what you've just done is you've reconstructed the thesis, right? The metaphysical thesis of what a person is. And that's the main issue that you're running into.
Wait, hold on. Wait, what do you think I just did? All I just said simply is just that a person, right, is just any entity which is in possession of a soul, and the soul is just a bearer of first-person experiences. Right, I'm clear.
Yeah, and I responded to that, right? So you're failing to, I'm not sure why you're doing the laughing thing, you're failing to track, right? So a person, right, the first person means something other than some perspective, and perspective means some like qualia that's existent, then you're just reconstructing the thesis, right? And if all you're saying is what person, the first person experience is just the experiencing of qualia, that's not something that has to be rejected by the person who rejects the personal identity thesis. And we still have the issue of what actually ends up making up the personal identity.
Yeah, okay. One, I'm not sure why you said like I failed to track. I think I tracked that perfectly. But two, the second thing is just like, okay, well, I didn't constitute a person as somebody, specifically as somebody who bears first person experiences. That isn't what I said. I said a person
Someone has a
specifically,
soul, and the soul is the thing which has the first person experiences.
Hold on. I said a soul specifically
I'm holding,
is
but
just
I'm
an
trying to get
independent.
clarity
Hold
on
on.
what you're saying.
Is just a non-physical, right, substance which is a bearer of experiences, and these experiences are inherently first person. And
no, it's the bearer of experiences, right? It's the qualia or the first person state. It's the qualia or the first person state.
Yes.
I understand this.
Yes. Okay,
this does not respond to what I'm saying.
Wait, hold on.
Do you
How is that
understand
not
why
a
this doesn't
response?
respond to what I'm saying?
Wait, how is that not a response? I don't know why you're loud micing. How is that not a response?
Because you're not interacting with any of the questions that I'm asking.
Just name
you're
the
just
question.
trying to derail the conversation. So what you are being asked is, right, the thing that you just defined now is the first person bearer of experiences, right? Which is just to say that some qualia is happening, correct?
No.
No, it is not to say some qualia is happening.
When I say
so
no,
instead
when I
you're
say
saying that there is some unified perspective through which the qualia happens or continues to happen.
Yes, a unified bearer.
Okay,
hold on.
Now
a
you're
unified
reconstructing
bearer
the
of
personal
mental
identity
properties.
thesis. This is why it doesn't respond to
Wait,
anything
hold
that I
on.
said.
I don't know why you're loud micing, but whenever I say soul, and I'm
Because
going
you
to
just tried
repeat
to
it a
interrupt
third
me
time.
there.
I'm going to repeat a third time. Whenever I say soul, what I just mean there is just is like a non-physical substance which is a bearer of experiences. I don't know what part of that isn't tracking.
I'm not sure why we have any reason to believe in any of the jibber jabber that you're espousing. As I just showed, it's just a reconstruction of the same metaphysical claim.
How is that a reconstruction of the same metaphysical claim? Just name me the claim and explain how it's a reconstruction.
All you're saying is that there is some unified thing which has the experiences, and that's the thing that's being called in the question. And so it's just begging the question against the
Oh, well, what's it called? If you're just asking me why it is the case that way, hold on. If you're just asking me why it is the case that mental properties. Well, okay, if you're just asking me...
I'm not sure why. This is why I have to loud mic.
You asked me a question.
You don't have any manners.
You asked me a question.
Etiquette.
You asked me a question.
If I had asked you a question, you should wait until I'm done asking the question.
Why would I need to wait till you're done for me to answer your question?
Because you need to wait for me to finish asking the question, you dumb fuck retard. No.
You already finished asking the question. Go on.
What was the question I asked you?
The question specifically is you asked me
What was the question?
I was about to tell you before you started
Spit
cutting
the fuck
me off.
out.
Anyways, right, so what you try to ask me specifically is to reconstruct my view such that it isn't a reconstruction of the initial metaphysical thesis, right? And then you were about to explain to me why it's a reconstruction of the metaphysical thesis that I already named to you beforehand, right? But you were unable to actually give me a solid explanation as to why it is a reconstruction.
I wasn't able to give you the explanation because you had cut me off.
Okay,
right?
but I did know the question.
You just brought up, you gave meta commentary that made you look like a dumbass.
Yeah,
that
I'm
was
sure, bro.
fucking incredible. Yeah, no, it was absolutely fucking incredible. You said that I asked this question and I get to substantiate the burden onto you, but you had just interrupted me while I was substantiating the burden onto you.
Please,
And
give us this esoteric
really all
piece
you're
of
doing
knowledge,
is
please.
throwing your hands around. I'm not sure what I'm supposed to be interacting with here. Listen, right, if you're willing to talk to me about the actual argument, you'd like to sit down, you have to have a real conversation with me, you can let me know.
I am
otherwise, right, get out whatever you need to get out because I'm not going to be accepting interrupting my response.
Go, okay, look, so if you want to like be silent while I'm finishing my statement, I'm just going to explain it again. If you're asking me why it is the case that these sort of first person mental properties we have, such as qualia, right, are back things which are actually properties of subjects, right, or properties of substances, then I just say there's an overwhelming inductive case, right, that mental properties, and I especially not only an overwhelming inductive case, but it also best accounts for our own linguistic practices.
It's really
right, as to
intuitive,
why, wait, hold on, as to why there's an actual independent substance there. So
yeah, it's really intuitive, but I still don't understand what it is, right? Because all it seems to be to me right now is like what a person is, right? Like what makes up the person's soul? If I'm identifying you, how do I know you have this same soul?
How do you know whether or not I'm the same soul? That literally has nothing to do with
no.
Hold on.
How would I figure that out?
The question of how you know.
Soul. It sounds like figuring out what a blurg is right now.
Yeah. Okay. The question
the same blurg over time,
and
that makes me a person.
Look. So the question of how like other people are able to know whether or not you are the same soul is entirely independent of whether or not there is a persistent self, right? Which is the entire way.
Hold on. Which definition because you haven't provided a proper account. Hold on. You're just trying to distract here. I'm not asking.
Which is the entire thing which I'm trying to claim here. So I don't know why you kept loud micing and cutting me off, right? So one, how you're able to determine that is entirely independent, right, of what I said, for one, and then two, I already told you that there are certain sort, like we can make certain sort of inductive cases, right, of people who bear specific sorts of souls, right, and we can make this sort of inductive case, we can, like, due to making these sort of inductive cases, you can give us good reasons as to why somebody has this specific, like, the same soul as before. So take cases where, for example, like I am the same person that I was tomorrow, like yes, tomorrow, right, and the way most people would be able to determine that is the sort of traits which I and only I seem to actually like display in the sort of manner in which I displayed them, right? I also seem to display them the next day, and that's good reason for us to actually think that we're the same soul, even regardless of the fact that that's entirely irrelevant. So please just go on without loud micing or cutting me off now.
No, notice how you cut me off there.
Yeah, man.
But it's fine. Right? You can server mute me all you want. It's just going to show you don't really have a response to anything that I'm saying. If you'd like to engage in this in like a place where you can't perm abuse, we can try and do that some other time. But Scoobert wanted to talk to me. And Scoobert's able to engage with things
this is like excellent dodging. Like I'm
a good faith linear guy. Yeah,
this is literally just excellent dodging, dude. Like this is blatant, right?
What? So I'm not sure it's a dodging, right? You begged me to have the conversation.
No. It's blatant. It's blatant dodging insofar as you just started asking me questions which are entirely relevant to the topic of conversation.
Listen, I was trying to get you to give an ostensive definition, but you acted like there was some error with the differences between the ontological and the epistemic.
Asking for an ostensive definition. You didn't ask for an ostensive definition. You asked for hold on. You didn't ask for an ostensive definition. You asked for how we're able to know if people have the same soul.
You just complained about interruptions.
Yes, but not when the other person is just blatantly lying.
You do not have any thoughts in your head.
Do I not have any thoughts in my head, or are you just blatantly just lying for the sake of saving face?
Substantiated arguments.
Wait, you're just blatantly lying for the sake of saving face.
I'm saying you just interrupted me there.
Asking me, wait, hold on, do you hold the view that asking me how you are able to determine if I have the same soul, right, is identical, wait, hold on, is identical to you asking me for an ostensive definition for a soul? Do you hold that sort of view? Like that?
Yeah,
Wait, hold on. So
clearly
hold on. So
asking you to
you think that
communicate the
if I
concept to
ask
me
you,
for
if
what
I
you
ask you,
sold.
how
So I'm
do
not
I
sure why you're asking me
determine? How do I
questions
determine
and
if
then
you went to
continuing
the
to
same
steamroll
school
afterwards. You were just
as
bitching about
Scuba?
not being
You think
able
that's me
to
asking you
answer
for a
questions.
definition for a school
So
ostensibly?
listen, I'm
That's just
I'm
blatantly
not really
confused.
sure why I would be wasting my time with someone like you.
Yeah,
Can
this is
you
just
give me an
blatant
argument
dodging.
as to why I should listen to anything you have to say?
This is blatant dodging. I mean, you can dodge again, right? And like
No,
away
no,
from the
no, but can you
conversation
give me
again.
an art? So stop dodging, right? I'm asking you something very clearly. Do you have an argument for why I should
Do I
listen to
need
anything
an
you have to
argument?
say?
Hold on. Do I need an argument when you're blatantly dodging
At
the
this
words that are
point,
coming
yeah.
out of your
I
mouth?
mean, it seems like I have a bunch of
You're
reasons to not engage
blatantly
with you and no
weaving away
reasons to
from the
engage with you. So yeah, you're
conversation,
gonna need
dude.
an argument to get me to
You're
engage with
blatantly
you.
weaving away from the conversation in order to save face, dude.
I'm not sure how I'm blatantly leaving away. You just server muted me. You just
Wait,
very
when you
clearly ran
started
away from
loud
the
micing
conversation
and
like a little
speaking about
bitch.
things which are entirely
Yeah, after you started
irrelevant,
interrupting.
which are entirely
Listen, you're
irrelevant
gonna
to the topic
continue to
of
interrupt.
conversation.
This is why I have to loud mic, because you're interrupting constantly.
Yeah,
And
man.
it's super obvious to everybody else in the voice
You
chat. I
need
don't
to
know who
loud
you think
mic,
you're
I'm sure.
fooling. Can
You
I talk to
need to.
Scuba now?
You need
Because it
to.
doesn't seem like you have any reasons for why I should listen to you.
I mean,
Do
yeah,
do
you can just dodge your
anything? Do you
way.
have a
You can just
job?
dodge your way, then. I mean,
Do you
well,
have a
you've
job?
been
Do you
just
have a degree in
fundamentally
any of
incapable
this?
of motivating any of the sort of claims
Is
you've
there
made,
any
dude.
reason I should
You've been
want to
unable
get
to
over your
motivate. You've been
horrible
unable to
conduct
motivate the view
and
that
brainless
the persistent
comments?
self is a social
Is there
fiction.
something that
You've
should
been unable to
motivate me to
motivate the
try and
view
dig past all
specifically
of that?
that again, even if that it was
I
a
guess
social fiction,
not.
that there would be a
I guess
defeatism
not.
argument. So again,
That's
it
a
seems
one
as
day.
if that in this conversation
Yeah,
alone, there are a bunch
Scuba.
of claims that you just have not
Scuba, what do you
substantiated.
want to talk about?
I mean, yeah, man, you can run.